Hi everyone. So what I'm going to do quickly today is to show you, how to take and draw key arguments out of articles. It's just going to be a brief little lesson to show you how to do that, so you can find an article and do that for yourself. And this is just kind of a quick guide towards that. So I'm going to share across the article we're going to be looking at today. So that is a piece called "We Have the Right to Bear Arms, but Do Our Children Have the Right to Live?" It's by a man named William Corgan, and it was published in the Jacksonville Bugle on February 19th, 2018, and is obviously to do with kind of the gun rights questions in America around that spate of deadly shootings in schools in 2018. Okay, so let's have a look. In the face of the most recent gun-related tragedy, it is both a joy and a condemnation to see our youth standing up for their beliefs and their rights. How can we as parents let our government stand idly by whilst our children protest their own murders? How can we as responsible parents claim that now is not the time for our proud country to stand up? So he's kind of given his stance there quite clearly and, kind of clued us into his contention somewhat. So he's obviously condemning, gun laws by supporting the protests against them by the children, as seen in this image. And also, he's kind of providing a call to other parents and Americans, both, a nationalistic and a paternal call, to stand up for their children's rights, because he's somewhat ashamed that those children have had to do this rather than rely upon their parents or the government to protect them. Okay. Every year, the NRA, National Rifle Association, fills our politicians' pockets with over $47 million to ensure gun control is not implemented in the United States. Blood money paid with our children's lives. Every dollar the NRA paid to stop stricter gun laws is an insult to the 362 children who have died in school massacres in the United States alone. Survivors like Sarah Chadwick don't want meaningless condolences. They need gun control. Okay, and this is where he really hammers that this is his point home. Okay, so his kind of key argument here is that it's not, a liberty decision. It's not a decision about rights to keep guns so accessible in the United States. He's saying it's 100% due to this, the fact that $47 million is being paid to politicians. Okay, and this key idea is, kind of the basis of this article, that it's all political maneuvering rather than actual moral or sensible policy, and that most of these politicians probably don't even believe necessarily that a lack of gun control is the right thing. They're just interested in those dollars. So what he's trying to do there is set up the politicians who are blocking gun control from going through as corrupt, or perhaps as not interested in the protection of their children. And he's trying to make the reader think about this, that if these politicians are opposing gun control, it probably comes back to this idea that they're being paid some of this money. Okay, and that makes the politicians seem to the reader to be corrupt, to be dirty, and would convince the reader that politicians who are blocking this are not doing it for the right reasons. Okay, that girl, by the way, is one of the survivors and one of the people who was a very strong opponent, or strong speaker for the students in this kind of issue. All right. Cullen Bean, Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, Stoneman Douglas, all places where there were school shootings. These places and these memories will not fade. 228 children were shot in school massacres in America over the entire 20th century. 82 years left in the 21st century, we have already had 206 such deaths. I'm appalled and mortified at the inability we as parents and we as a nation display to save our most precious asset, our children. Those who argue that gun control doesn't work clearly have an aversion to both research and common sense. Since Australia implemented strict gun laws in 1996, they have had no mass shootings. In America, we've had 8 school shootings in 2018 alone. If we as a people cannot listen to personal testament, I implore you, America, to take note of those hard facts, as difficult as they are to stomach. So what he's doing here is he's setting up this idea that not only has this been a problem for a while, but this is a problem that's growing really, really fast. So if over a 100-year span, they had 228 school massacres, or children die from school massacres, and in only 18 years, they've had 206 deaths, then that, I guess, opens this avenue of thought to the reader that this situation is getting worse and that the current laws probably aren't adequate, or else that number wouldn't reflect such a strong growth. Okay, and it's making the reader think that, well, if this is the case, if these deaths are getting worse and worse, then we probably need to do something. Okay, that maybe gun control, is the answer. And he supports that further with an example of Australia. Okay, so he provides comparison between both America's situation and Australia's and said, well, gun control does work because Australia put it in 1996. They haven't had a single school shooting. All right, so what he wants the reader to think about is, well, one, we probably need gun control because this problem is getting worse. And two, gun control works as it did in Australia, which is a similar country in a lot of ways. All right. While some conservative parties may claim that the majority of these horrific shootings are committed with weapons obtained illegally, we must take such assertions with a grain of salt. So this is kind of a rebuttal. What he's doing here is he's kind of arguing against that point that a lot of people who defend guns make, that people who commit crimes are using illegal weapons. Statistics suggest that this is not the case, and further, if these dangerous weapons were made unavailable, then a smaller portion of them would be acquired, whether through legal or illegal channels. So his point here is that if we make less guns available, then less people are going to be able to get them, regardless of the way they get them. So that's a good thing. Okay, so he's rebutting that idea, and he kind of highlights this. He's talking about the Republicans and the NRA when he does that, which is the tie back to this, okay, this idea. We as a people, as a community, and as a nation need to band together and say enough is enough. Without stricter gun laws, more of our children will die, a price which I am not willing to pay, no matter the reward. And there he makes it clear. What he wants people to do is, particularly parents, American parents, is to stand up and take more of an active role in this political conversation, to take, I guess, this conversation and support their children in asking gun control. So to recap, his key arguments were any politicians who block gun control are likely to be taking on this $47 billion payment. And in fact, it's that payment from the National Rifle Association, which is keeping guns so uncontrolled. He said this problem is getting worse, which implies that something needs to be done about it. And also that, the solution of gun control worked in Australia, so it should probably work in America as well. And finally, whilst people say that lots of the guns that used are illegally obtained, if we make less weapons available, then there's going to be less gun crime and less access to these weapons, full stop. So that will be a good thing. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy your own foray into breaking down key arguments.